morning. Welcome to the Dailies on Network Television, where we keep you updated with all that is happening in our papers. A number of stories on the paper where we're seeing the people who have been abducted, talking about over 1,000 students have been abducted and killed in Nigeria. A report coming from the UNICEF, and then also we're seeing the back and forth concerning the directives that have been given concerning the former governor of Kogi State, talking about Yahaya Bello, where he's presently on the watch list. So we have other story we would love you to be part of. Please do remember you can follow us live on Facebook and on YouTube. Drop your views, your contribution, and any of the stories that is of interest to you. I have Rachel Tenzin. I'll be doing the program with me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, we'll go straight into the paper, starting with the Vanguard newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, the big story, Tinubu's government hasn't borrowed from CBN, says Edom. Ways and means to be pinned down to deal with liquidity. And then we have fiscal monetary authorities complementing each other to bring inflation down. Discloses government will borrow less and focus more on domestic resource mobilization. You can find details on page 2. Nigeria's sovereign wealth funds grows by 1.19% to 2.258 trillion naira. You can find details on page 9. Agitation for Yoruba Nation laughable, coming from the defense headquarters. Over 1,000 students, educators abducted, killed in Nigeria. Report from UNICEF. Wike triumphs as PDP NEC endorses Damogun-led NWC. You can find details on page 4. On UTME, jam to arrest parents seen at CBT centers. Court halts Ganduje's suspension. This is happening in APC. You can find details on page 26. Federal government places ex-Kogi Governor Yahaya Bello on watch list as EFCC declares him wanted. Anti-corruption CSOs tackle EFCC over ex-Kogi governor. You can find more details on page 13 and 12. Federal government will pay 3.2 trillion naira as subsidy if tariff hike is reversed. This is coming from NERC. More details can be found on page 4. Poor production. Oil Minister CDS vow to curb oil theft in the Niger Delta. Details can be found on page 6. We have a column on page 17 by Owela Kemfa, and then sports on page 29 that says Crystal Palace set eye on Lookman to beef up squad. A picture story, UBA America hosts reception at IMF World Bank meeting. And that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On the Metrics newspaper, we have 3.2 trillion naira subsidy needed to reverse electricity tariff hike. A report coming from the federal government, which you can read more detail in the paper. And then for sport here, we have FA Cup replaced to be scrapped from the first round onwards in 2024 to 2025. PDP fires the federal government and seek review of electricity tariff hike and other economic reforms, with the writer saying, presidency kicks in, says government reforms are yielding fruits. You can find more detail of that in the paper. The big story for the paper is on Yahaya Bello's 80.2 billion naira fraud saga worsen as Tinubu aide asks the ex-Kogi governor to surrender and get a good lawyer. EFCC declares the ex-governor wanted malls using military to fish him out from hiding. Bello speaks from hiding, says case against him political witch hunt. Federal government flags Odudu for assisting Bello to avert arrest. You can find more detail of that on page 2. FCCPC sealed another Abuja supermarket over unfair prices and moves against price fixing. More detail can be found on page 11. I'm excited seeing that they're actually doing what they are supposed to do. Yeah, I remember 2 days back you and I were talking about the fact that we hope that they will go into the market and be sure to monitor the prices. And I'm happy we're beginning to see some successes here. One of the supermarkets in the FCT has been sealed. So that is just a warning for other supermarkets that are actually planning, or they are not really looking into where prices are to actually, go down on their price. CBN Governor Cardoso breaks silence over depleting foreign reserve. More detail can be found inside the paper. At next meeting, PDP retained Damagum as acting chair. More detail of that paper can be more of the story can be found in the paper. And on DNA, called to serve Mohbad's wife by substitute means. We remember the issue concerning doing a DNA for his son to be sure if he's truly Mohbad's son. And here we're seeing called to serve his wife by substitute means. More detail can be found in the paper. Federal High Court stops APC from suspending Gandoji, that is the chairman of the APC. Also, Whitney Aderini court fixes May 2nd to rule on admissibility of evidence. More detailed in the paper. And here we have a picture story where we saw Jolly Good Fedo. That's the caption where we have the Vice President Kashim Shettima greeting the ex-President Muhammadu Buhari at the banning ceremony of Alhaji Nasiru of the Saudi of Duse in Jigawa State recently. And that's all on the Metrics newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Yahaya Bello. EFCC declared former governor wanted. AGF urges Bello to toe path of decency. You can find details on page 2. Mixed reactions trail Adeleke's proposed new logo for Osun State. PDP NEC endorses Damagum-led NWC. Kano court halts suspension of Ganduje as APC chairman. Tinubu orders censors for teachers, students in policy overhaul of education sector. You can find details on page 13. The big story, Nigeria's sovereign wealth fund hits $2.5 billion as NSIA grows income by 1.122% to 1.18 trillion naira in 2023. You can find details on page 13, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the first newspaper, Kanu court stops Gandoji's suspension, orders return to status quo. Detail found in the paper. And on Ondo Guber election, how Owo stood still for Governor Ayeda Tiwa, where with the rider here saying 171,922 delegates set for the APC primary. Tinubu deliberately put Northerners in key position. This is a report coming from Ribado. Federal government begins price enforcement in Abuja, targets Lagos and others. German-American billionaire declared dead in 2021, found with mistress in Russia. Data found in the paper. Tinubu's economic reform yielding results, says Aleke. You can find more of that story inside the paper. And the big story on the PDP chairmanship, Wike's ally Damagum survives Atiku governor sacking plot. But he actually boasting that the party chairmanship not a matter of life and death. As the PDP board of trustee queries the national secretary, Anya will continue to stay in office. More detail found in the paper. Nogra NIPR week set to boost economic reputation. Revitalization kicks off April 22nd. Abiodun donates 25 patrol vehicles to police, demand technology used to tackle banditry and terrorism. And we can see the features and the picture story following up on that story. And we have NATEP, NAP's fake reverend sister for trafficking 38 children. More detail in the paper. And on the alleged 80.2 billion naira fraud, EFCC declares Yahaya Bello wanted. NIS placed him on watch list, where we have the commission threatening to involve the military in his arrest. Federal government warns politicians against obstructing anti-graft agency operations. More detail inside the paper. And here we're seeing Google sack 28 workers protesting contract with Israel. You can look up that story inside the paper, and that's all the first newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, the big story, PDP NEC intrigues as Damagum survives, hangs on till August. NEC approves timetable for state congresses. You can find details on page 4. Yoruba Nation agitators are lucky they would have been dead, says the defense headquarters. Federal government to spend 3.2 trillion naira on electricity subsidy. This is coming from the NERC chairman. Nigeria's consumer lending market hit $2.7 billion in 2023. Court issues order restraining Ganduje suspension implementation in Kano. You can find details on page 6. Tinubu approves system-wide policies to overhaul education sector, aims to improve learning, skill development, ensure academic security of children. At the downside of the paper, EFCC declares ex-Kogi Governor Yahaya Bello wanted over alleged 80.2 billion naira fraud. Details can be found on page 6. And then we are seeing the building of the Yoruba agitators being demolished by the Oyo State government. This happened on Thursday, that is yesterday, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On New Telegraph newspaper, still on PDP, Damagum survives sack as NEC extend acting tenure. We've seen that forces August, September for leadership change, and then Damagum has overstayed. This is coming from the Board of Trustees. And then we have your NEC meeting achieve no purpose. APC tells the PDP. More detail found on page 2, 26 and 28. Currency devaluation drags Nigeria to Africa's fourth largest economy. RMAFC, federal government received 7.3 trillion naira revenue in the first half of 2023. Senate proposes 279 bills in 10 months. This is coming from an investigation. Federal High Court restrained Watt from suspending Ganduje. Aircraft makes air turn back over fire indicator light. Ohaneze ex-governors lament neglect of the Eze fair advice to the nation. More detail of that story can be found inside the paper. Reps reject electricity tariff increase, where we are having Eco Electric plans to migrate all consumers to band A and B. You can find more detail of that on page 5 and 7. And on the UTME exam, we have arrest parents found near exam center. JAM tells the CBT centers that we know the exams will be holding tomorrow nationwide. So wherever you are, if your date has been set for tomorrow, please, a warning to parents, do not be found around the centers and just let your wards write their exams and they will be done. We will make our position on state police known soon, coming from the IGP. Arise new channel goes live in South Africa, Angola and 8 others. You can find detail on page 3. Those taking up arms against state will incur our wrath, coming from the military. Warn Yoruba nation agitators against their action. Makinde demolishes agitators leaders house in Ibadan State. Detailed on page 3 and 5. New Telegraph Road 3 International District 9110 best newspaper in humanitarian reporting for 2024 as Williams and others shine at the event. You can do well to read more detail of that event on page 4. And we have a study that says low vitamin D increase aging muscle loss. So it's good that you take more of the vitamin D, starting from taking a walk under the sun in the morning, and then you can do well to read more detail of other vitamins or food that are actually having vitamin D in it. More detail of that can be found on page 26. We have a picture story on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any of the story that is of interest.
On Daily Independent, PDP NEC meeting. Relief for embattled Damagum as Wike's calm trances Atiku's party to resolve leadership tussle in August and September. Damagum explains why he survived coup d'etat. And then we have the Board of Trustees says litigations impeding solutions to leadership crisis. PDP asks Tinubu to rejig economic team to reposition economy. Details can be found on page 29. JAM empowers CBT owners to arrest parents found near exam hall as exercise set to kick off nationwide. Don't desecrate courts while fighting corruption, CSOs warn EFCC. Condemn rush to arrest ex-Kogi governor despite pending appeal court hearing. Why Tinubu deliberately put northerners in key places by rebuttal. Presidency behind Ganduje's travels is coming from a Kano APC spokesperson. Alleged 4 billion naira fraud, you must face trial, court tells former Anambra Governor Obiano. You can find details on page 7. Tinubu moves to overhaul education sector, order censors of schools. EFCC's charge, court fixes April 23rd for ruling on substituted service on Yahaya Bello. We've not hand in Ganduje's travel, says NNPP, as party reveals readiness to contest Ondo Edo Guba polls. Insists it is not trading place for Tinubu in 2027. At the downside of the paper, troops neutralize 192 terrorists, apprehend 341 in 1 week. A report from the Defense Headquarters. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On the Punch newspaper, still on the 80 billion naira money laundering, where we're seeing the federal government have placed Yahaya Bello on the watch list, immigration alert the DSS. With the writer saying federal government order border surveillance, asks the DSS, NIA, and police to prevent the ex-governor escape. And then we have EFCC should obey court order restraining ex-governor's arrest. Bello's lawyer is insisting. We're seeing the back and forth concerning the. Well, if the federal government is insisting that he should submit himself for scrutiny, and I think he should do just that, Rachel. So I wonder why we are having him refusing. And then it's even more serious right now because he has been fixed on the watch list. In fact, the Nigerian Immigration Service have brought out an investigation and compliance form where they have put his nationality, his passport number, his date of birth, everything concerning him, saying that he is actually an eagle eye is being said on him. So I just feel that we said this yesterday, but we cannot overemphasize the fact that regardless of who you are, we said the law is king over everybody. Submit yourself if you have nothing to hide. If you did not spend those 80.2 billion naira, fine. You just go and say you didn't do that. And I think that's all that. I remember you saying the fact if only he had submitted himself when he was being summoned, we wouldn't have all of this and get into this way. So the more you run, the more it implies that you have something you are hiding. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and then we'll see the circular that they have directed informing people wherever he's seen, and then they should always comply, because we have politicians always trying to obstruct. Where we see the warning had been given to his the present governor of the Kogi state, where he actually helped the former governor from escaping. So people should stop standing on the way of justice. Just let justice prevail, and whatever needs to be done eventually, because the same most of our people are actually taking this story seriously. So I think we should also take it seriously by trying to comply with the agency. Whatever they are asking, just give them an answer. And I believe that when we do that, I mean, not just politicians, but for everybody in Nigeria, I think things will be better rather than having all of these dramas and confusion coming out in the paper.
You know, when you look at the charges against him, he can only but stay in his hideout and call it a political witch hunt, but it's obviously not. Because when you look at, just as we said, if you had gone and submitted yourself when you were needed to come in, then you wouldn't become a criminal on a watch list, because you need to explain the transactions that happened that led you to be on the watch list in the first place. And when you look at such amount of money, you procure a company, and for a certain amount of money, which is also big on the first place, under what company, or under as an individual in the government, using that kind of sum of money to procure such a company, it becomes your owner. That money already is red flag, and then it's expected for the Financial Crimes Commission to look into it. Say, like, if today as an individual with your normal bank account, for example, having a limit, if there is a limit that if a transaction should be made automatically, just you, not even a politician, just a normal person out there, the bank is expected to report it, and then you are to be called and be asked, what is this transaction for, what it is for, and then and you'll be cleared. That's how it works. And then you look at these billions and billions, and then shortly after having the ownership of this company, then later on another approved billions of naira into the account of this company and all of that. And then, of course, you are expected to go and be questioned and be asked, because it has been an alarm has been raised. See this transaction going on. It's not government transaction. It's not government contracts being awarded through ministries or agencies in the state for this, for that, or not. This is going from this account to this personal account under the name of this company by this person and that and that. And you are expected to go and answer, because it is a signal. It raises an alarm for a criminal activity based on our laws when it comes to money transfer, banking, and all of that. And then didn't show up for questioning you, didn't show up to answer, to clarify, and all of that. And now you are in your hiding, calling it a witch hunt. It doesn't look like a political witch hunt whatsoever. You need to account for this kind of money. It is huge. We are seeing the EFCC saying Obiano is not going free for just, it's not just. Compared to Yahya Bello's amount, is just 4 billion compared to 80 billion. Of course, 4 billion is still a huge such of money, amount of money. So yes, it is important. 80 billion is not chicken change whatsoever, and there should be. You are by law expected to answer and explain what was this transaction for and all of that, and you can prove yourself that it is legit, clean, not fraud, not embezzled fund, you walk away. It's that simple. So I mean, let's just wait and see how these things turn out and play out. Yes.
Because I mean, just imagine that he was actually trying to get into the position of the president of Nigeria. I mean, he bought the form because he wanted to, and here we're seeing things turn. We'll keep our fingers crossed and see how the story unfolds. Federal government enforces prices in Abuja supermarket. They should go to other states as well, because a number of Nigerians are being exploited by various marketers. So we hope that more will be done about that. Needed to the Federation's account in 6 months, coming from the RMAFC. And on anti-party activities, PDP next silent on Wike. Saraki leads a peace panel. More details found on page 3. Troops rescue pregnant Chibok girl with 3 children on page 14 of the Punch newspaper. Ogun acquires 25 vans mans Lagos Expressway with drones. More detail in the paper. Lagos Calabar Highway, federal government panel to pay compensation. 16 killed as Borno bus runs into a swap explosive, and that was really a sad one. This happened on Wednesday precisely, so we really send our condolences to people who got affected during the explosive, and we hope that our security agency will do something before we begin to see more explosives standing up in various APC aspirants for the 171,900 delegates. More detail found on page 3, and we still have the story where we can see Governor Abiodun trying to get all those security vans and all that is needed. So that's all the Punch newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, World Igbo Congress advocates political solution. This is for Kano. You can find details on page 4. Defense headquarters exposes terrorist sponsors deadly plot. Says they are planning to blackmail military. Reveals troops kill 192 terrorists, arrest 341, rescue 62 hostages in 2 weeks. Debt Management Office puts Nigeria's debt at 97 trillion naira. No respite for Secondus, Omeha, and Opara as court fails to vacate order barring them from PDP meetings. Damagun has overstayed as acting chairman. This is coming from the Board of Trustee Chair. Saraki heads Reconciliation Committee. Details can be found on page 7 and 26. Alleged 4 billion naira fraud. You have case to answer, court tells Obiano, ex-Anambra governor. Domestic flight prices plunged to 68,000 naira amid first quarter passenger slump. Jonathan dignitaries praise late ex-lawmaker Cairo Ojebo. You can find details on page 26. Court halts Ganduje's suspension, others return of status quo. Details can be found on page 6. Federal government backs EFCC on action against Bello. Submit yourself to EFCC. FABME tells ex-governor. Anti-graft agency declares him wanted. Rush to arrest Bello despite pending appeal court hearing suggests political persecution coming from CSO. Abiodun donates patrol vehicle to police. Ogun most peaceful state coming from the IGP. You can find details on page 5, and then we are seeing picture story where we can see the ceremony where Abiodun is donating these patrol vehicles to the police, and then at the downside that of UBA at the IMF hall, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, living on war front, that is the big story for the paper. Borno resident on the edge, tiptoeing on active line mines and the IEDs, where we have between 2016 and February 2023, about 2,468 people have been injured, including 1,478 civilians, 1,419 including 842 civilians were killed as a result of explosive ordnance. Where we're seeing this is the data coming from the United Nations Mine Action Service. Now we're seeing that in over 13 years of conflict, the use of IEDs, mostly planted by non-state armed groups, has resulted to numerous deaths and severe injuries to civilians, hindering access to basic social activities and services and socio-economic activities, hampered safe return of IDPs and refugees, as well as the free movement of host community members. And this is really a sad one because of all of this explosive land mines and all of that. So you can do well to read more detail of that and what can be done to actually prevent all of these deaths from resulting again, not just in Borno State, but then we're seeing that in even other parts of the country as well. NCS hands over 1.7 billion worth of seized fake drugs to NAFDAC. NCS hand over 1.7 billion naira worth of seized fake drugs to NAFDAC. You can find detail on page 8. Police invite Apata Edo LP chairman over Uniben violence and shooting. More detail found on page 28 as well. Over 6,000 illicit weapons recovered nationwide in 3 years, a news found on page 28. Kano APC accuses presidency of sabotaging Ganduji as ex-governor gets reprieve. Coming from the World Bank, rising inflation, weak earning pushed 10 million Nigerians into poverty in 2023. More detail found on page 8, and we keep our fingers crossed to see what will be the new minimum, which maybe that will be able to help, and then we'll see how our inflation will be controlled, because we saw that according to the report coming in from the IMF that the inflation might go down next year and then subsequently the following year too. EFCC declared Bello wanted over alleged 80.2 billion naira fraud. PDP NEC retained Damagu, asked the Tinubu to rejig economic team. And we have Obiano loose bid to stop 4 billion naira fraud trial. More details found on page 7. And that's all on the Guardian newspaper. But before we move further, we would love to take a break at this moment to let you through the story. It's quite a lot where we're seeing the former Kogi State Governor is on the watch list. And then we're seeing that after the NEC meeting of the PDP yesterday, they have retained Damagum to still be the acting chairman of the party. And then we're seeing that a number of stories, what happened in Borno State on Wednesday, where we saw about 16 persons lost their life due to an explosive in the state. So when we come back, we will continue with the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories where we see the Yahya Bello, the former governor of Kogi State, being on the watch list, and then another Chibok girl has been rescued with 3 kids. And then also we are seeing the issue of inflation, and then where we are also seeing that talking about the FCCPC going round supermarket to make sure that prices of goods are being regulated and monitored. Where we saw that the supermarket in Abuja has been sealed, and they are moving towards going to Lagos, Port Harcourt, and hopefully also going to other states to make sure that Nigerians are not being exploited by people who are selling goods in the market. I'm Sarah Elisha. I still have Rachel with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel.
Welcome.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper on our list for today.
On Nigerian Tribune, APC chairman court stops Ganduje suspension. Federal government needs 3.2 trillion naira for electricity subsidy in 2024. Northwest has highest rate of poverty in the country. The big story, PDP neck, Damagum survives push to out him. We can find details on page 2. Those expecting party implosion disappointed, a statement from governors. Until 2024, as APC gets set to pick candidate, Tinubu keeps contenders guessing. Kogi governor to lead APC committee. Despite producing 21 billion eggs annually, Nigeria spends $1 billion importing egg powder. Coming from minister, against senators, reps postpone resumption by 7 days. EFCC declares Yahya Bello wanted. AGF warns against obstructing commission from performing its lawful duty. Don't desecrate courts while fighting corruption. Anti-graft CSOs caution EFCC. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Friday leadership newspaper, 3.2 trillion naira subsidy needed to reverse electricity tariff hike. More details found on page 18. And on Yahya Bello, court to rule on substitute service April 23rd, which is on Tuesday next week. And what's trending here, we have repentant Boko Haram women can't get spouses. And on numbers, IMF reviewed Nigeria's economic growth to 3.3%. Both stories can be found on page 2. Kenyan defense chief and 9 others die in air crash. That's a sad one. More detail found on page 7. And on party crisis for the PDP, we have for now, Damagum remains our chairman, coming from the PDP NEC meeting. Leadership tussle shift to August. Governors pass vote of confidence on the National Working Committee, and court have rescued APC chairman Gandoji in Kano State. More detail found in the paper. Stay away from exam venues. Wujam warned parents. More detail can be found on page 13. We still have feature stories showing Governor Abiodun during launching the patrol vehicles to the police, where we can also see the IGP present there during the launching, and that's all on the Friday leadership newspaper.
On this day, Ribadu not susceptible to insecurity because of sweeping youth illiteracy, says Tinubu gave critical appointments to region to address its challenges. The big story, EFCC declares Yahya Bello wanted as AGF warns fugitive ex-governor. Agency tells court it may engage military to effect his arrest. Fabemi says obstructing justice not allowed. Police withdraw security. Immigration sends signal, puts him on watch list. At the top of the paper, in groundbreaking move, Arise goes live in South Africa and 9 additional countries. Television station now in 54 African countries. PDP national chairmanship, not matter of life and death for me, Damogun declares. And we have a picture story, Dapo Abiodun tackles insecurity with drones, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Richard, this story coming from advisor Ribado here, saying the fact that non-substitute insecurity because of sweeping youth illiteracy, and we saw another paper talking about poverty being more in the north than in any other part of the country. And we cannot deny that that is a fact. No wonder insecurity tends to be thriving more in the core north than in any other part, even though other parts have their own, where we have kidnapping and others. But whenever it's a story like this, the next question that will come to me, and I believe is what Nigerians also are asking, is the fact that when we are saying that insecurity is thriving more there as a result of illiteracy, where we could even see children as young as 7, 8. I remember the young student from Plateau State that was going there that was being killed by a very young boy of about 7 or 8 years, and then you could actually tell how these kids have been trained. Now the question is, what is our government doing to make sure that the north is no longer a thriving place for this insecurity? That is to say, we need to put in more resources to make sure that more people that are being educated, talking about illiteracy, more people get access to food, because right now it has given to the point that a number of people even trade their words for food because they don't have food. So why don't you send it? Now we're also seeing on the leadership saying repentant women, repentant Boko Haram women cannot find spouse. Of course, nobody wants to marry them because people are still afraid that maybe they have tendency of, harming them or so. But then when I see a report like this coming from our security agency talking about the fact that this is what is happening, now the question of what is the government doing? We're seeing here in Borno from one of the paper, which happened to be the Guardian, where we're seeing what have been happening concerning explosive people who have been dying. And we know that Borno has been like a place where this insecurity had been thriving before we saw Zamfara, Katsina, and other places taking. What can the government do? Because it's becoming tiring each time you read to see that the north is like this, and even when you say you're from a particular place, we are being categorized, all of these people are just from the north, and so you are being seen like a terrorist. Now we are seeing that people are even lying about their nationality outside the country. Why? Because Nigeria is now being seen as this country whereby, insecurity is thriving no matter. What can the government do to make sure, let us reduce the number of people? I know during the Goodluck administration, he tried to start that Al-Majiri school, which I don't know what is happening about that school right now. But I'm hoping that something of that nature should be introduced so that we can have more people being enlightened, because all of this thing is happening because of ignorance, and illiteracy is thriving. That is why we're having things happening in this way.
It's one thing for Ribadu to say that, and then it's another thing for him to be very truthful about the situation in the north concerning illiteracy and the reason behind backwardness in education and insecurity. So if you look at the history of Nigeria, up from after colonialism, when we had a prime minister, down to when we started practicing democracy, down to the Fourth Republic, moving on and on and on, the North has had its fair share of representation in politics and in the leadership of the country. They have had more compared to other regions. They have had more key positions in leadership. When we look at the military regime, when we look at even the presidential regime and all of that, one way or the other, we've had northerners being in power. So the question is now, is it the deliberate attempt to not educate your people, or what is the problem? Because you have no reason whatsoever to be backward when it comes to education. You have no reason whatsoever, because when it comes to political power, the North have been in forefront. When it comes to governance, they have been in the forefront. So why are you not? We've had President Muhammadu Buhari been president for 8 good years, 2 tenure. What development regarding education was taken to the core north or the far north? We can talk about his state. What about other states around? What was done about education? So the question is, do our northern leaders want their people to be educated? That is a question you have to ask them. Do they want them to be literate? Because obviously it looks like otherwise, because it's not a situation of being marginalized. We have ethnicities can say that we've been marginalized when it comes to government and politics and the reason for our backwardness. But the North can't say the same thing. That would be a lie, because they've had their fair share in the government, in the politics of Nigeria. So do they want their people educated or not? And with all that is looking so far so good, it looks like they enjoy or want their people to be in this to be illiterate and not educated, because they've had over the years, ever since the independence of Nigeria, opportunity to advance the North when it comes to education. But what have they done about it? And even with the last administration, was something significant done about educating people in the North? These are the questions to ask. Do the northern leaders want their people to be educated? Because they have been in power up to now, they are represented, they are in key positions. You have rightly said that. So let's wait and see. 4 years later, would they do something drastic? And if eventually President Bola Tinubu happens to have a second term, it means these people will still be represented there. What will be the difference? And then from there, we will know. Already indications are showing that the northern leaders whatsoever are okay with the illiteracy of their people. Now we have more years to give them the benefit of that, to see will there be any difference in this administration. Until then, I believe Badu should just address the issue more as it is, than just saying what we know, that the real root and the problem is what these northern leaders have been doing in the past years precisely.
Richard, if that is the case, because from all the indication, you rightly said the fact that we've had northern leaders in the helm of affairs for a very, very long time.
Yes.
In fact, we can go back to even starting from the Murtala administration,
Exactly.
going down to Abacha, Abdul Salam, IBB. Let's just talk about all of these leaders. Now, you really stated that we've really had northern leaders in the helms of affairs, but then the question has been, what is happening? Are you using this illiteracy as a way to make sure that you marginalize the people, making them not to be aware of what they are losing out? Because if that is the case, then that means this is very, very unfair to the North. Because if this is what our leaders are doing, you've been given the opportunity. I clearly remember during the election where we saw one of the senators coming out to say that we cannot go electrical. Why? Because some of our communities do not have light. And I remember you and I asking the question, whose responsibility is it to make sure that there's power down there? There's no place that should be living in darkness at this point in time, but it's surprising that we have it. So I'm hoping that when we see stories like the Rivado should be able to call other northern leaders. I should see, and we have a northern forum. So I wonder, when you go during that meeting, what do you discuss? Do you talk about liberating your people? Or do you talk about making sure that you keep putting them down there, let them know what is happening? So we hope our leaders will bring out the North from the darkness, let them see the light, let them be exposed, because believe me, when they are educated, Nigeria will become a better place. They have all that it takes to thrive. So we hope to see that subsequently. Well, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. Still on Kogi State, beware of pending appeal court hearing, anti-graft CSO tells EFCC and others. More detail can be found on page 6. And on news, we have the FCC PC short 4U supermarket evacuate 94 bags of expired rice and drugs. So it's important when you go to buy goods, please make sure you check to be sure that the goods are not expired. I've been a victim where I've seen some seasonings being expired and they are still being sold, and people that are buying. So please do well to check the expiry date, make sure that it's good for you to consume. And then we have over 7 trillion naira accounted into the Federation account from July to December 2023, a report coming from the RMAFC. The big story on the 98 NEC fallout, we have Damagum remains PDP chair, as Atiku Wike shift battle to August. Board of Trustee queries the acting chair Anyanwu stays in office. No implosion, dissenting voice, Bala assures. You can find more inside the paper. Surrender to EFCC, federal government tells Bello as ex-governor wants arrest other vacated. More details can be found in the paper. Defense headquarters warn Yoruba nation agitators of their consequences. Uncover plots to blackmail military, neutralize 192 terrorists. More detail in the paper. Tariff hike to save federal government 3.2 trillion naira in 2024 electricity subsidy. This is coming from the NERC. And on the UTME, we will arrest any parent found at the CBT Center. More detail found inside the paper. Niger facility paragram shift to low carbon economy. This is coming from the governor of Niger State. More detail on page 22. Downside of the paper, court stop Kanu word from suspending Gandoji. More detail can be found on the paper, and that's all a Blueprint newspaper.
On Punch Sport newspaper, starting with the big story, Rabiu Ali exclusive. I do everything it takes to avoid any form of vices that will affect my health. For instance, womanizing, drinking alcohol, and all sorts. My long NPFL career. You can find details on page 6. Osimhen will be fantastic for Liverpool. Saints boss hails excellent Aribo. Unbeaten Leverkusen advanced to semis, and then we have Red Crash. That is Liverpool. Wilder fired up for potential Joshua clash. Arena rules ITF World Cup exit. Mbappe insists PSG win won't change his decision. Arteta not giving up on EPL chase after UCL exit. City battle Barker for 60 million euros or more. You can find details on page 4. United to offer Greenwood for Juve defender. You can find details on page 4. The downside of the paper, Wally braces for African Scrabble title defense. Abimbola eyes Go TV boxing 1 million naira cash prize. You can find details on page 3, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
On Business Day newspaper, Agege bread to noodles. High wheat import hot naira and jobs. You can find more detail on the issue of importation of wheat, where we've been talking about ever since the crisis that was taking place between Ukraine and Russia. This was a time for Nigeria to look into, having their own wheat, but we still import it. And then here we're seeing how that is hurting our naira and also the jobs of people. You can read more detail of that on the front page and continue on page 31. Data shows CBN not defending naira with the FX reserve. And then we have Ajaokuta Steel Complex outlives 16th president in its moribund state. We hope that this present administration will look into that steel so that it can start working, and then we can have our steel companies and everything here in the country. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun, Bundesliga top nominee Boniface battles Kane. You can find details on page 6. Atalanta lands in UEL semi-final. Now we have I'm ready for war, Kane tells Bellingham. Barca Chelsea battle for Dybala. I enjoyed Arsenal UCL exit. This is coming from Dyer. And then we have how Jesus reacted to Man City's UCL exit. Poison Sterling returns to action. UCL exit, Haaland, De Bruyne were tired. This is the excuse coming from Pep. Saka awarded was great. Crystal Palace wants Lookman. You can find details on page 6. PSG can afford 161 billion naira Osimhen. Statement from his agent. It will be Basi Raid Okocha. You can find details on page 6. And we have U6 team wary of judges for Fury fight. You can find details at the back page, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you to our followers, thank you to our viewers, and also thank you to Rachel for always doing this with me. Also, we come your way next week. Please do have a blessed weekend ahead. Bye for now.